What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel. Good to be back. Joined this morning by Daniel Starkand, here to talk a little Yamamoto update. Daniel, this story is starting to sound a lot like the Ohtani situation, where there's lots of teams involved and lots of money thrown around. We'll jump right in. Jack Harris of the LA Times reporting that Yamamoto is still the Dodgers' top priority, and adding that they are willing to go. They're considering a bid of 250 million to 300 million, according to a person with knowledge of the plans but unauthorized to speak publicly. Obviously, a bunch of teams involved. Do these numbers surprise you, or just based on how long this has stretched, is this kind of where you expect this thing to land?
Yeah, well, first of all, I know you tweeted something along the lines of how you were happy that Yamamoto waited till you were back to sign. I think the rest of us would kind of disagree. We're all starting to get a little antsy here, but yeah, I saw this report and I wasn't surprised. I think it's become clear kind of since the Ohtani move that the Dodgers are all in for Yamamoto here, and if you even want to be in the conversation here, that's kind of the dollar amount you're going to have to get up to, probably even more if we're being honest, just because Steve Cohen is lurking in Queens. So yeah, I mean, I think we all know the Dodgers need starting pitching. We all know Yamamoto is the best option that's out there. So this kind of all makes sense. It's, it feels like it's going to come down to where he wants to play, not as much the money, which is, if you're a Dodger fan, like that's all you could really ask for.
Yes, Steve Cohen is two of the most dangerous things in the world. He is rich and desperate, and that's not what you want if you're the Dodgers. I'll be honest on Yamamoto, as I've sort of listened to podcasts and read more up on this guy. There were two things that have stood out to me. One was an interview with Jeff Passan, where he just talked about, hey, compared to other guys who have come over, we have so much pitch data on these guys that, yes, there is maybe some concern about how's it going to translate to Major League Baseball. And yet, when it comes to so many of the things that we can measure, spin rate and angles and all that kind of stuff, we have so much more information on him than we had 10 years ago when guys were coming over from the KBO or from Japan. And so that's one piece that makes me feel a lot more comfortable about a big number and a big number of years. And then also, I believe it was Ken Rosenthal in The Athletic talking about Yamamoto, and people have compared his stature and said, hey, he's a small guy. Like, do you really want to go long term? But he talked about how Yamamoto is really into flexibility. He doesn't lift weights. And the two names he compared it to, and he said, look, I'm not saying Yamamoto is going to be these two guys, but he used two examples of pitchers who were very unorthodox, who were undersized, and who have been successful. And it was Tim Lincecum and Pedro Martinez. And when I heard those two names, and I think about all the data we have and all the unique stuff that Yamamoto's into as far as training goes, I left reading and listening to those pieces even more excited about the possibility of Yamamoto becoming a Dodger.
Yeah, and honestly, I feel like a lot of people don't know this, but Tim Lincecum kind of started the whole like driveline, movement. I'd say like just his mechanics. When he was around doing it, there weren't very many people replicating it, and now you've kind of seen a lot more pitchers kind of getting the most out of their bodies, whether it's a small stature or whatnot. I know Trevor Bauer is obviously another pioneer there. I know he's not the most popular guy around here, but those are the things that help with longevity. And you're talking about a 10-year deal here, maybe even like a 12-year deal for Yamamoto. So those are kind of the things that teams, value. And when you're giving a 25-year-old that long-term deal, you want to make sure that, obviously you're going to have probably some bad years at the end of that contract, but you want to make sure you get as many good years as possible, whether that be 7 or 8 good years. Maybe you get 10 in the last 2 or wash years. You'll live with that. But I think that's very important here, just because a guy with a smaller stature, technically health-wise, doesn't hold up the best. And we even saw that with Tim Lincecum. Like, he was phenomenal, obviously, but he didn't have the longevity as a lot of other pitchers. So that's kind of the one downside, I'd say, to Yamamoto. But it is good that he kind of has these training methods that have been working for him, and obviously he's a phenomenal pitcher, and he's 25 years old, so you're not really worried about that for another decade or so. But it is good to see that he kind of values those things.
As far as who is competing with the Dodgers, we've mentioned the Mets, the Yankees, Phillies, and Giants among those still in the mix, the Blue Jays as well. Let's start with the Mets. Steve Cohen is desperate to make a splash. the Yankees and Mets are the only two teams we know of that have met with Yamamoto twice. The Mets met with him in Japan and then at Steve Cohen's home. The Yankees have met with him, I believe, in Los Angeles and then in New York. But the Mets are an interesting one, Daniel, because it provides the big stage that he reportedly wants of being in New York City. The downside is the Mets aren't going to be competitive this year, maybe even not next year. That's where Yamamoto fits because he's only 25. So that's one piece. The Mets, interestingly enough, though, Daniel, have tried pitching Yamamoto on, hey, do you really want to go to LA and be in the shadow of Shohei Ohtani? Do you really want to sort of be the second most popular Japanese player on that team where people aren't even going to pay attention to you because Ohtani is there? I'm curious your reaction to that kind of ploy as far as how they're pitching Yamamoto on the Mets.
Yeah, I got a huge chuckle out of that, to be honest. Like, first of all, acting like wanting to like play with the best player in the world who's also from your own country like is a bad thing. Like, to me, that's an argument in the Dodgers' favor. Like, hey, we have Shohei Ohtani, come play with Shohei Ohtani. So that was the first part. Like, they were trying to make that like a bad thing when to me that's a huge positive. And then second of all, like if the season started today or when the season does start, the Mets are going to have their own Japanese star pitcher on the mound on opening day, I would assume. Kodai Senga was one of the best, rookies in baseball last year. So it's not like he'd be joining the Mets and he's the only Japanese player on that team. Like, they also have a Japanese star in their own right. So I don't know. I don't know what Yamamoto's line of thinking here. Like, I don't know exactly what's most important to him, but it seems to me if I was the Mets, that's not the pitch I would be making.
Especially when the reports are that the fact that Ohtani was recruiting Yamamoto and showed up to the meeting was, quote, highly significant. So that feels like it's a positive. So maybe this is something working in the Dodgers' favor. A couple other interesting notes. The Phillies, Bryce Harper joined the pitch. Daniel hopped on a Zoom call, took a break from his vacation to hop on a Zoom call. I'm not sure Bryce Harper necessarily stacks up against Yamamoto, Mookie Betts, Will Smith, and Freddie Freeman, though.
Yeah. When we're talking about recruitment pitches, I don't know if anyone's beaten the Dodgers just on Ohtani alone. Honestly, like, I know it's been a hot topic since the Tyler Glasnow move about the video that Ohtani sent him and how much he loved that. Like, can you just imagine being a free agent and you get a video from Shohei Ohtani recruiting you? Like, I don't see how you say no to that.
Yeah, the last one here, the Giants, some interesting notes. Farhan Zaidi reportedly is as in on Yamamoto as any free agent of the last 6 years since he took over as Giants general manager. In many ways, there's a similarity with the Mets in that there's a lot of question marks about how competitive that team is going to be. That's the piece that doesn't make sense. The flip side is the Giants were willing to give Ohtani the $700 million contract. They clearly have money to spend. I wonder, Daniel, if the Giants are going to be the team that ends up offering the most money and whether or not that tips the scales for Yamamoto.
Yeah, that's kind of how it feels to me at this point. Like, it feels like if he wants the highest offer possible on the West Coast, he's going to go to the Giants. On the East Coast, he's going to go to the Mets. If he values winning above all else and playing with other great players, then he's going to go to the Dodgers on the West Coast and then the Yankees on the East Coast. So I don't know how much different the offers are going to be. Like, hopefully it's only a small difference to the point where Yamamoto's like, an extra 20 million over 10 years is not worth it for me to be on mediocre teams in San Francisco every year. But considering how many stars the Giants have struck out on, it's not surprising to me that they're kind of going all in for Yamamoto here. At the end of the day, he has to want to go there, and that's been their issue in recent years. And if to me, like, I have a hard time seeing him picking the Giants when given the other options he's going to have.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary by you on like what does Yamamoto want? Like, if it's money, then there's a decent chance the Dodgers could be outbid because there are two teams that are so incredibly desperate to land him. The Dodgers are by all accounts desperate, but there's a different level of desperation when you just spent $700 million on Ohtani and you already are the World Series favorite compared to these other teams. But the flip side is the Dodgers offer something that the Yankees maybe offer, which is the chance to be competitive, the chance to go out and win. Obviously, the Dodgers' trump card is that they have Ohtani, who is not just the greatest player in the world, but if you're from Japan, he is like literally a hero there. And so, again, that might be a positive. That might be a negative. There were reports that Japanese players tended to want to not play with other Japanese players. I feel like if there's an exception to the rule, it's Ohtani. But again, like Ohtani's silly season, there's so much of this stuff that I don't know what to believe and what not to believe. Of course, we will find out shortly. One other note that's worth pointing out. Bob Clappish, who is an MLB columnist in New Jersey, tweeted, growing sense among teams bidding on Yamamoto is that a decision won't be made until after Christmas, could stretch until the January 1st through 4th window. He has to sign by January 4th, January 5th. So that would make sense. But Daniel, to your point, those of us waiting now I'm joining the waiting crew now that I'm back. Those of us waiting,
welcome aboard.
yeah, we don't like the idea of another 10 days of waiting on this. So remains to be seen how this plays out. But again, lots of news on Yamamoto, lots of smoke. When the decision will come remains to be determined. That is Daniel Starkand. I'm Jeff Spiegel. If you are new here, please subscribe, ring the notification bell. If you're a podcast person, you can find us on Apple, Spotify, Google. Just search DodgerHeads, subscribe to us there as well. And of course, DodgerBlue.com has all of the latest, these rumors, notes, details, quotes, all of that. So check that out as well. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. Enjoy the rest of your day, folks. And as always, go Dodgers.